Well, one thing which may have helped Gordon Brown this week is that those ministers who have gone and those MPs he would regard as disloyal have often been associated with Tony Blair. The fault line in the Labour Party was once over the nuclear deterrent, but for the past 12 years or so it's been between Brownites and Blairites. Why has this, in effect, a difference of personality, such a hold on a party which always insists it values ideas and policies above personalities? David Grossman reports.
The partnership between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown has defined British politics for 15 years, and the breakdown of that relationship is still having a huge influence on the instability of Labour today.
Even now, after the passing politically of Tony Blair, it's still all about Brownites and Blairites. This is the rift that never healed.
Like a lot of great partners, they didn't always get along as the years passed. They didn't always agree. They drifted apart. They did incredible things on their own as individuals, but they did their best work as a pair. I love them both, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. I'm also fond of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown.
When Lennon and McCartney fell out, the antagonism found its way into music.
The only thing you've done was yesterday.
When the Blair-Brown relationship broke down, it wasn't because of policy differences, but because they made policies rather than, say, write songs. It just found its expression in policy. It was really about a personal difference. Gordon Brown never fully accepted that Tony Blair should be leader of the Labour Party.
When the leadership became vacant in '94, the pair met at a restaurant called Granita in Islington. Tony Blair told Gordon Brown that he was definitely running.
Desperado.
These days, it's a Mexican restaurant called Desperados, an appropriate name perhaps, an appropriate place to meet Guardian journalist Jonathan Freedland.
The Brownites used to like to flatter themselves that it was an ideological divide and that they were on the left of it. They would certainly try and persuade people like me on the left of centre paper like The Guardian that they were a more radical, real Labour alternative to the privatisers and free marketeers in the Blairite camp. Tony Blair himself was very, very dismissive of that. I mean, I remember him saying to colleagues, you know what, it's not true, you know, he's just like me. Brown is just the same as me. He'll try and dress it up, but he thinks just what I think. And I think actually, though you can find the odd hair-splitting difference, the truth is this has never really been about ideology, it's been about power.
Divided by personality and outlook, Labour figures gravitated to either side. Peter Mandelson chose Tony Blair. Young advisers James Pennell and David Miliband worked with Mr Blair at Number 10. Ed Balls and Ed Miliband worked with Mr Brown at the Treasury. The relationship between the two organisations barely functioned. Years later, Blairite James Pennell resigned from the cabinet there not because of policy differences, but because of Gordon Brown's leadership style. The same with Caroline Flint. She also complained that she'd been briefed against by Number 10. Senior Labour MP Barry Shearman found himself in a similar position after he'd called on Gordon Brown to go.
I hear this morning that Number 10 has been ringing around my constituency party, urging them to have a meeting to discipline me because I've been speaking out on this issue. Where are the boundaries to what Number 10 can and can't do?
By 2006, Gordon Brown's resentment had lasted more than a decade. His people began putting pressure on Tony Blair to name a date for his departure. So when Gordon Brown supporters now talk about loyalty and sticking to Labour's rules for changing leader, well, the Blairites just laugh. Eventually, Tony Blair had to publicly promise to stand down within a year. His warning to his party at the time still has resonance.
We can't treat the public as irrelevant bystanders in a subject as important as who is their Prime Minister. So we should just bear that in mind in the way that we conduct ourselves in the time to come.
Gordon Brown keeps smiling, but now one of his ministers resigns over his leadership.
Last September, disaffected Blairites started trying to do the same thing to Gordon Brown. The revolt was quelled in part by bringing back Peter Mandelson to the cabinet. He was a Blair supporter, but now worked to police a truce between the sides.
Once Purnell had gone and Gordon Brown feared a flight of the Blairites, he no longer felt able to make Ed Balls, the uber Brownite, his most loyal ally, his chancellor, as if that would somehow be the trigger that would push the Blairites off the edge, that would be too far. You know, all the time it was about that balance. And central to that is the man who really defined, in some ways, the divide, Peter Mandelson. Once Gordon Brown got him on side, made him part of his team, that was really the block on the Blairites leaving, and he needs Mandelson desperately.
That's why the Mandelson emails in tomorrow's News of the World could be so politically damaging. Some Blairites are still promising to make trouble. The truce is not total. The war is not over.
I'm joined now by the editor of The Spectator, Matthew Dancona, and the Guardian columnist, Polly Toynbee, who's called on Brown to resign. Is this a Brownite, Blairite thing still?
No, it's not. It's gone way beyond that. And the fact that Peter Mandelson has been the arch protector of Gordon Brown in this crisis shows that it's not about that. It's about personalities, but it's above all about power. And the real divide is between those who believe that the best thing to do is to hunker down, leave Gordon Brown in position and hope for the best, and those who believe, rightly in my view, that the best thing to do is to get rid of Gordon Brown and risk an early general election on the basis that having someone at the top who's able to tie the party's shoelaces up and say, sorry, we got this wrong, we need a change, is the best option. That's the real divide.
Is that the best option?
I think it's turning ideological in a way that's a bit alarming for the Labour Party, because a lot of people on the left want Brown to go. I mean, they know perfectly well that his policies have been absolutely the same as Blair's policies, but also, you know, they've just confronted an election which has been a blue wipeout. I mean, vast swathes of Labour councillors gone, terrified at what the results are going to be tomorrow night. But it is turning ideological because the left, seeing that so many of the people who have been the Purnell, Blairs, Jackie Smith lot, suspect that they are all, which indeed they are, more likely to be privatisers, modernisers, public service reform, the things that they like least about Blairism, which of course has been Brown as well. And as a result, they're sort of gathering around Gordon Brown, although they know he's a calamity.
But then the implication of that is this could go on and on and on. And if you're just one of the normal citizens of this country, you must wonder about a leader torn constantly between different wings of his party, having to make deals and not being able to focus on actually getting us out of a terrible economic mess.
But let's be clear, this is not over. I mean, you've got a broken-back Prime Minister who couldn't even change his own Chancellor. He's got a supine cabinet that failed to respond to the cue of James Purnell and was bought off on Friday. But really, this is just half-time. Everyone is waiting for Sunday night's European election results. When they come out, the next step is to see what the Parliamentary Labour Party, what the Labour movement does. Now, they may do nothing, but there is still a lot to come.
Fascinating poll, absolutely fascinating poll, just come out, YouGov poll for Channel 4, of Labour Party activists. Now, normally the activists are the most loyal. They're the ones who are most disgusted if they see people at Westminster stitching up the leadership or trying to knock a leader apart. You know, when Lib Dems did it, when the Tories did it, the party activists were angry. But this time, I think it's rather remarkable that less than half of party members want Brown to lead Labour into the next election. If 70 MPs sign, they think he should go. 2/3 think Brown is bad at communicating his ideas to the public, and almost half think that he's weak and indecisive. So although there are some contrary things that they also think, I think that's quite significant, that those who've just been out on the doorstep know how unpopular Labour is.
Without getting into the mechanism for doing it, it's very difficult. So the implications are you're right, he will twist in the wind, and that will perhaps not be the best for the country.
Charlie Kennedy made a very good point earlier in the debate, which was it's not about arithmetic, it's about tone, it's about feeling. Now, I think we're almost at a critical mass where Gordon Brown simply cannot carry on unless he wants to be remembered as a Prime Minister who was absolutely simply a husk standing in number 10 with no real authority.
So you think not only should he go, but he will go, is that right?
I still think that on balance it is likely that in the next couple of days events will conspire against him. But I was surprised, I have to say, by how absolutely cowardly the Cabinet were on Friday. It was stunning.
Yes. Spineless jellyfish.
Spineless.
You think he should go, but will he go?
I think it's sort of 50-50. I think it depends how bad the results are. I mean, if Labour comes fourth, if Labour gets sort of 20% or let alone less, I think he's a goner.
got around it there. That's it for this Newsnight special report. We're back at the normal time on Monday. We'll see if Gordon Brown is too. Goodbye.